Hello, this is Skylit Lake reading Super Science by That Chicken Dude. Chapter 23, When Villains Attack, Part 1. The hand villain, who was called Tamura by the mist villain, scratched at his neck and chuckled in a raspy tone, while saying, "So good to see all of you here in one place. That sure makes our job much easier." "What do you want?" Eraserhead demanded. "And who are you?" the Lad King also demanded. Tamura tilted his head and told them, "Us? We're the League of Villains, and we're here for All Might." This time it was Egon to speak, as he walked up a bit to expose himself and informed him, "Hey, handyman, if you haven't noticed, we don't have a 7-foot-tall, blonde, Japanese wannabe American otaku stomping around. Why do you think he was here anyway?" "According to our sources, All Might was supposed to be here today," the Mistman, who was known as Kurigiri, answered politely. Egon rolled his eyes whilst waving the statement and exclaiming, "Bologna! If he was gonna be here, I would have been informed." "Actually," Nezu said in a small tone. Egon snapped his neck to him and asked in a serious tone, "Are you joking?" Nezu shook his head, and Egon held him up by the collar and shaked him while yelling, "You low-grade back-alley science experiment! Why didn't you tell me that All Might, of all people, was gonna be here today?" "Would you believe me if I said it slipped my mind?" Nezu answered as he was violently shook, as the other pros tried to stop the mad scientist. Hey, why are you angry? Are you scared that you didn't make this place pretty for his arrival?" President Mike tried to jokingly wear off the current aura. "More like warn someone of it," Egon grumbles. "What?" President Mike answers back. "Nothing," Egon quickly says. "Hey!" Tamura shouted. All heads turned back to the confused villains, and Egon states while dropping Nezu, "Oh yeah, you're still here?" After adjusting himself, he tells the villains, "Well, listen, whatever your name is, since All Might isn't here, that means you can leave, right? I mean, you went fishing for a whale and got guppies. What could you possibly gain harming 3 pro heroes who aren't even that popular or liked?" "Hey!" President Mike shouted. "A bunch of snot-nosed teenagers who haven't even experienced sex." "Hey!" one of the teens yelled, and a couple of no-name scientists. "Hey!" Professor Genus yelled, only to get smacked upside the head by one of Professor Cephalopod's tentacles. "Shut up! He is trying to save us," he hissed at his companion in a low tone. "More than you think," Tamura stated boldly. "Explain," Egon offered, looking intrigued. "What is he doing?" one of the teens asked. "Buying time," Izuku whispered to them. "Even if we can't kill the simpler piece, we can still make our name known to every person in Japan, and your deaths will do just that," Tamura stated with sinister intent. Egon put on a confused expression by this statement and dissected it. "But none of us are relevant. If anything, you'll be seen as a bunch of psychos and possible pedophiles. Killing the symbol of peace? Now that is a way to send a message. And have your name whispered with fear. Us though? Really?" he asked while looking around at them. Tamura scratched his neck in thought before saying, "Can't believe I'm saying this, but you might have a point." "Holy shit, it's working?" Orpington whispered excitedly. "So you'll leave?" Egon prompted Tamura, who then shook his head with a cocky smile and said, "Nah," as the other villains started to close in with sinister smiles. Egon sighed at this and said, "Welp, I tried. Security, activate command overrides, initiate all kill modes. 000001000 kill initiate. The villain stopped, looked around for whatever was supposed to happen, but when nothing did, Tomorrow chuckled and said, "We've knocked out your security system before coming here. You're trapped. Shoot," Egon said in a calm tone. Then the floor opened up around the crowd and Egon shouted, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what the hell?" "Divide and conquer" was the last thing Egon heard the villain say before all went black. Chapter 24 When Villains Attack, Part 2. Egon was grabbed by the sensation of falling, overtaking his body and senses. But the sensation quickly stopped as soon as it came, when he landed on his butt a moment later. After shaking his head and rubbing it, he said to himself, "Well, that was unusual. Kinda felt like swimming in air." The voice of Izuku chimed. Egon whipped his head and exclaimed, "Izuku!" Izuku smiled wide at seeing him, exclaiming, "Egon!" The two embraced each other, as Egon stated in a relieved tone, "Oh, I'm so glad you're all right." We're here too," a voice said to the two of them, jumping to their feet and wearing themselves in the direction of the perceived danger. They relaxed when there wasn't any danger. "Oh, Nezu, and you," Egon stated while pointing to the principal and Bakugo. Egon then quickly looked around and asked, "Wait, where's the other three?" Everyone looked around, but there was no sign of Eraserhead, Blood King, or Present Mike anywhere. The nerves settled in again as some of them assumed the worst, which was also confirmed by Nezu. "They must be still at the auditorium," he thought aloud. "Where are we?" Bakugo asked, looking around. "Back in my office?" Egon trailed off while realizing where they were. Then a thought shot through his head, and he exclaimed, "Hold on, where'd everyone else go?" Egon immediately ripped out his phone and dialed a group call. Putting it on the speaker, he called, "Attention, attention, roll call." Very quickly, everyone picked up and answered back with a "here," to which Egon and Izuku sighed in relief. "Oh, thank the gods. Where's everyone?" Egon asked, trying to hide his fear and desperation. "I'm back in my wing with Professor Cephalopod," Genus replied. "I'm back in mine too," Hollyhock confirmed. "Mine too," said Hankayo. "Me too," said Hatsume. "Me three," Honeylemon said in a shaky tone. "I'm here in my wing with Dr. Orpington," Cho told him. "We're safe as well. We got transported to the storage house with several students," the Morgana triplets told him in unison. "That nitwit villain sent us to our respective areas," Cluck laughed. "Which means we still have the advantage," Otto exclaimed while slapping his tentacles. "At least we know that all the students are all safe," Nezu sighs in relief. Izuku nods, grateful that the kids were safe and accounted for. He then took a more serious tone and said, "Okay everyone, we're in dire time with security against us and the doors locked down. I am officially initiating all-kill protocol. Defend yourself by whatever means necessary." Yes, sir," everyone replied back. Sir?" Cho inquired. "Yes, Cho," Egon replied. "As it turns out, the security system isn't down," she told him, making everyone listening raise their eyebrows. "I think those clowns tried to hack us, but it was around the time I was doing a diagnostics. We're still in control. Just have to wait," she explained, the smile on her face being felt through her words. Egon fist-pumped and exclaimed, "Sweet." "But we're still in lockdown," she followed up. He deflated and asked, "Not sweet. How long before the diagnosis is finished? After a few seconds of silence and typing from Cho, she answered affirmatively, 5 minutes. Everyone, hold out for 5 minutes, Egon commands. Yes, sir. They all answer back as he disconnects from the line. Egon and Izuku then open a hidden panel in the room. From there, they both entered individual codes for scanning their eyes and fingerprints. Nezu and Bakugo looked on in confusion over what they were doing, wondering what else was hidden in the walls. So, what are we gonna do? Bakugo asked calmly, more confused by the two scientists. Try and get out, or help the heroes, Izuku answered as he spoke through the voice recognizer. How are we going to do that? Nezu prompted. The two of them then took out keys from their sleeves, plugged them in, looked at one another and nodded. They both turned the keys at the same time, causing green lights to flash, and something else to open up in the wall. Egon reached in and took out two objects that looked like collars, and Izuku took out a small rack holding several splinters. Egon put it on before putting Izuku's on as the teen hooked several splinters around the collar, making the mouse and blonde teen look at one another in confusion. Even Nezu shrugged when Bakugo asked with his expression. Once secured, Egon answered, something that was also put in your waivers. Creature division. Just before the teens could buckle down for help to arrive, a black portal opened out, and then came several dozen villains into the science wing and began to surround the young heroes and two scientists, all of them smiling sinisterly like hungry lions cornering an injured gazelle. Nowhere to run, little heroes, one of the villains vexed. Otto, what do we do? We're trapped and have no way of defending ourselves. I have an idea, just let me cook, Otto whispered to him with a wink, before putting on the theatrics, exclaiming like an old movie star, Oh, you're right, villains! We're so trapped, and weak, and at your mercy. But can you at least let an old octopus have one last request? The villains chuffed and asked, What is it? How is that octopus talking? Another villain pointed out. Can I dry my eyes and blow my nose one last time? Otto asked, putting waterworks and blinking his big eyes. If that's all then, sure, go ahead. The villains agreed as Otto reached out for a box of tissues, and then the villains putting on a thinking face and realized aloud, Wait, octopuses don't have noses. Suddenly the villain was hit in the face hard by a tentacle. The blow was so hard and decisive that the villain was sent flying back to the wall where they passed out. And neither do you, sucker, Otto exclaimed as he retracted his extended limb. How'd he do that? One of the other villains asked in awe. Like this, Otto exclaimed while punching him in the face, and did the same thing as the first one. But then more tentacles began to grow from his body and started to suck the villains with a flurry of blows. The villains began to grow panicked, and some tried to run away in the chaos. However, one villain stood firm and reignited their disposition as they claimed, Calm down, you guys. It's just one fish with a bunch of legs. It's not like he's gigantic or something. The villains trailed off as he watched the small octopus transform into a little behemoth. You were saying? Otto asked him before letting out a roar and started to grab villains and crush them in his powerful grip. Unbeknownst to any of them, the professor had 4 splinters wrapped around one tentacle behind himself. A splinter that allows for the stretching of limbs, a splinter that allows for the growth of additional limbs, a splinter that gives gigantification, and a splinter that gives a form of hyper-regeneration. As the octopus monster took on the villains with seeming ease, our young heroes looked on with a mix of shock, awe, and horror. "Could he always do that?" one of them asked the professor, to which he casually shook his head and answered, "No." "Plant division. End of the line, green thumbs," a villain exclaimed in a devilish tone as they cornered the kids and the female scientist like hungry lions cornering a gazelle. Hollyhock glared at them and stated, "That's what I should be saying to all of you." She then thrust her hands and every planet in the greenhouse started to move before quickly attacking all of them. Vines grabbed and strangled, buds and pods spat spore, poison needles and goop. Plants that had teeth began to snap them up, plants that hypnotized, and plants that shot elements and explosions. The villains screamed in shock and fright as Hollyhock concentrated on keeping them back. "What the hell? The plants are alive!" one villain screamed before getting caught in vines and being shoved into the toothy maw of a carnivorous plant. Sound division. "Ungoliant! Ungoliant! Where are you?" Hunko exclaimed as he practically turned his office inside out, only for him to instantly relax as he stated while hunching over in a corner, "Oh, there you are. I was so worried." "Who's Ungoliant? Your sister, girlfriend, daughter?" the student asked as a man turned around with a cupped hand, happily and proudly revealing a spider no bigger than the head of a pin, to which the students freaked out and tried to swat at it, yelling, "Ah, spider!" Before the students could swat at the tiny thing, one of Hankoyo's head tubes whipped out and bit him on the nose. Hankoyo turned away, protecting the spider, and exclaimed, "Don't hurt her. She's just a jumping spider. She's harmless to humans, and helps keep me sane." He said the last bit with a slight unhinged expression. Another student who saw this trailed off uncomfortably. "You stay in your terrarium where you're safe, okay? I love you," he told the little spider while placing it inside a environment that was far too big for it, giving her a little kiss before closing it. He then turned back to the kids and stated seriously, "Okay, kids, now stay behind me. No matter what happens, you need to stay safe." Before he could finish, one of the doors busted in and a dozen villains poured in while one of them said, "Trapped like rats." Hankoyo stood in front of the teams, arms spread to protect them. He then stood before them with his chest out and declared, "Okay, listen up, you villains. You can turn tail and leave or stay and suffer." All the villains began to laugh at his declaration. One of them asked vexingly, "Ha, what are you gonna do, Hankoyo sighs as he closes his eyes and reaches into his pocket, taking out a splinter as he says, "I don't like using my quirk since it reminds me of my past. But you freaks have left me with no choice." One of the head tubes, the one that looked like a tail, curled up over his head, where it split open at the tip onto something that looked like a microphone from the early 1920s. He breathed deep as his other head tubes moved to the top of his head and opened its mouth. Hankoyo then produced a high A note with such hypersonic power behind it. Not only did it send villains away in a shockwave, it also caused their ears and organs to burst while the skin was pulled off their bodies, leaving them bloody messes along the wall. Hankoyo gasped and coughed hard, falling to his knees as the teens, now releasing their ears, surrounded him in worry. "I didn't know your quirk could do that," one of them said. "It can't," Hanko told him while wiping his mouth. Robotics and machine division. "Any last words, String Bean?" the female villain asked rhetorically, as she and a bunch of other villains cornered Hansume and several students. The pink-haired man fixed his goggles and stated with a smile, yes, actually, could you hold off your attack for another 30 seconds? The female villain raised an eyebrow and asked, 30 seconds? What's happening in 30 seconds? Oh, just the update I've done on the robots, Hatsume told her with a knowing wiggle in his finger. Robots? She questions, wondering what he was talking about. Then a loud ding sounded off in the room they were in, like that of a toaster, and Hatsume excitedly shook his hands while exclaiming, Oh, they're done, wait right there. He then ran off and pressed a button on the wall near a strange door. It opened up to reveal darkness within. Red eyes glowed one by one. Within a few seconds, a horde of robots came out in 2 single-file lines with arms raised out in a threatening display. What the hell? The female villain shouted as they were filling out like a tidal wave. Robots, commence Operation Swarm. Go, Hatsume commanded. The robots turned their unmoving, cold, emotionless eyes and began to march towards the intruders with murderous intent. Very quickly, the villains found themselves with the shoe on the other end of the foot. Crap, there's so many! One villain shouted before getting swarmed and torn limb from limb. The female villain was doing better as she managed to take down robots by the handful. Realizing something, she exclaimed, But they're so weak, we can take them. Hatsume smiled at her comment and stayed back while rocking on his heels. You know, I wasn't going to bring it out yet, since it was only 50% completed. But since you think you can take out my army, I guess I'll just do it anyway. It needs a field run. He then ran through the same doorway that the robots came flooding out of, and a large garage door next to it opened up to reveal Hatsume standing much taller and making a lot of unnatural sounds. When he came out, he was sitting inside a clunky suit that looked like something from Mad Max. As the hulking behemoth of iron stepped out, the villains lost their edge. He has a mech! One of them yelled as a giant fist of iron came down on them. Chemical Division, go away, go away, go away, go away, go away! Honey Lemon screamed as she blasted the onslaught of villains with a giant ray gun that shot out streams of green acidic liquid, leaving a trail of death and screaming as villains began to melt to nothing. Defense and Armaments Division. We need backup. Call the boss. A villain screamed as they ducked for cover with another villain that was trying to fiddle with a radio. I'm trying, the other villain yelled back in a panic just before his head was blown off his shoulders. The villain screamed but steadied himself and grabbed the radio as more gunshots were heard. After fiddling with it for a bit, he finally got a connection as he watched a brave soul attempt to run headlong into the fray, only to be gunned down a few seconds later. Boss, are you there? Say something, the villains yelled through a speaker. What is it? Tomora's scraggly voice answered back. We need help, he begged. Sounding annoyed, he shot back. It's just a one-eyed woman and some brats. They can't be that hard. Shaking his head, he exclaimed, It's not the kids, it's her. She's dropping us left, right and center. You said this would be easy. She's quirkless. How are you having trouble? Tomora yelled, enough for all to hear. But the villain's head was blown off right at the moment when Cho yelled the answer, I have a shotgun. And I have an egg cannon. Say goodbye to your necks. Cluck laughed as she used her machine to hold and fire her invention. The two of them worked in tandem to quickly shift the tide of battle in their favor, with all the villains cowering at a single woman and chicken armed with nothing but firearms. Storehouse. What the hell is this shit made out of? Open up this force field right now, the villain demanded as they pounded on the force field made by the Morgana triplets. And let you in? Morgan asked rhetorically. Fat chance, Millicent scoffed. How about this instead? Megan offered as a piece of the force field broke apart and slammed into the villains in the form of a tendril of darkness, sending him into the wall and knocking him unconscious. Another villain growled and proclaimed, You can't hold this wall forever. You'll drop it, or we'll break it. We don't have to hold it forever, Morgana started. Just have to buy time, Megan continues. Then you see the surprise we have, Millicent finishes with a wry smile. Auditorium. Tamura nearly broke the radio he was holding in his hand, resisting the urge to use all 5 of his fingers. He was trying to get in contact with his last few groups after the last one went dead, only for his irritation to grow as he got almost nothing back. Throwing the device on the ground as the battle raged on behind him, he yelled, What the fuck is going on? Is everything alright, young master? Kurogiri asked him. I have no fucking idea. I can't get in contact with any of our team, and the ones I can are either static or just screaming. How in the hell are we getting creamed? Tamura asked after realizing what happened to the others. Kurogiri pats his shoulder comfortingly and tells him, Not to worry. Even if we lose all our help, we only need Nomu, and the heroes won't last much longer. As he says this, they both look out into the large room where the 3 heroes were fighting against the hulking Nomu, and not doing so well. Things were looking good for the scientists, but not for much longer. Hey guys! Hope you enjoyed these chapters. These chapters were quite short, but really packed with a lot of information. Definitely loved the chemical division reporting. Just a ray gun spewing acid. That sounds disgusting. Anyway, I'll see you later. Bye!